So I want to touch on a concept tonight. I asked my fire team guys this week what their definition of ego was. I want to know, what's your definition of ego?
Running your mouth and not being able to back it up.
I don't think Steve agrees with that. Go ahead, Steven.
I think it's your ego is more of you think you need to do something to prove something to somebody else instead of proving it to yourself.
It's your self-esteem.
Self-esteem. Anybody else? Some of the guys said, do you have anything to add to that, Kyle? Mr. Van?
No, I mean, for me, it's more or less, just like your big head thinking that you can do something that necessarily you can't, but you don't know what your limits are.
Okay.
For instance, ego lifting. It's like, you know what, I'm gonna ego lift 500 pounds knowing damn well I can only squat 350. But you know what? I'm gonna quarter rep it, and then I can say I can do 500.
Well, I'm fucking incredibly happy that you went down that path. Why would he do that though? There was a guy that I called out in our group today. He's all, I did 315 for this many reps at the end of my workout on decline, bro. Did like fucking half reps. And I'm like, today 0 reps were performed, kind sir. What was the difference between him doing full reps of 275 versus doing half reps of 315?
It exposes his insecurities. Plus, people with egos want to use other people's weaknesses or inabilities to boost themselves up and make themselves look and appear bigger, better, and stronger than they actually are in reality. Because in reality, they have to sit down and pee. So they have to use other people's weaknesses to make themselves feel adequate, because in essence, they're just fucking inadequate.
So here's a phenomenal example, and I'm going to use another because I didn't notice. There's a guy in our group. He's new. His name is Antoine. And he said that I was stupid for suggesting that we throw away good snacks when we have kids. And so I'm going to go ahead and pull up a picture of Antoine and his wife from his public Facebook profile. I'm going to share it with you guys. I'm the one who looks fucking stupid. That's fucking 500 pounds of human in one photo, and it's only 2 fucking people, and I'm the one who looks stupid. What I think is fucking stupid, Antoine, while you're in my Facebook group taking away value from the people who are here to fucking learn, is the fact that you have so much of a fucking ego that you think the world needs to change their expectation of right because you're too fucking lazy and fat to have the discipline to change your fucking habits. That's what I think looks stupid. What I think is fucking stupid is when you have children and you feed them fucking poison because you're too lazy to figure out what needs that change in your fucking life and apply the discipline, the grit, and the fortitude that's necessary to lead your home by example. So instead, you're going to take your wife and your fucking children down that path with you. That's what I think looks stupid. How fucking dare you come into our fucking community and try to poison it with your nonsense? It's one thing to have a poor habit and have it affect you. Bro, if you want to have a fucking heart attack and die of type 2 diabetes because you don't have the wherewithal to control what you put in your mouth, that's on you. It's another thing to impose that belief upon the rest of the world to make it easier for you to live with the fact that you don't have the fortitude to make the changes in your life that you know you want to make. And the third, last, final of it is to lead your innocent children down that path so that they turn into a weaker version of you. Your ancestors should be ashamed. You are the weakest of your bloodline, and you're okay with it. So okay, in fact, that you're willing to make your bloodline even weaker, and you don't deserve to be in my fucking group. All right, so what is ego? It's my perception of myself, right? The way that I define ego is how I believe the world should view me. So when you say somebody has a big ego, what you're really saying is that the gap between who they really are and who they think they are, or who they think the world thinks they are, is really big. They have a big ego. There's a big gap between what they do and what they say they do or what they think they are, right? And so when I look at it from this perspective, what occupies that gap? Anybody?
Lies.
Lies. What else?
Bullshit.
Bullshit. What else?
Insecurities.
There you go, Chris. Good. What else? Emotions, anger,
Fear.
fear, depression, anxiety, right? Who here has read Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich? What are the 6 basic fears you must overcome? Fear of poverty. What else? Fear of criticism, fear of ill health, fear of loss of love, fear of old age, and fear of death. Those 6 fears, except for fear of death, there's ego involved. And actually, you could make the argument that fear of death also involves ego as well. Because if I come to a place where I feel that I've fulfilled my purpose as a man, I've accomplished all my life is set to accomplish, it requires that I set aside my ego, and I don't have that big gap for me to come to the end of my life without regret, right? Like my goal is when it comes time for me to die, I'm not afraid of it because I've accomplished everything that I want to accomplish, right? That would be like the ultimate goal, be like ready to go, ready to pass, like I served my purpose here. Chuck deuces. So in order for us to live in a world where, and this is exactly why I preach and teach integrity so much, is because in order to overcome and defeat my ego, I have to do 2 things. The first thing is I have to live in alignment with my values, right? If I'm in 100% in integrity with the man that I want to be, then I won't struggle with ego because there's no gap between who I am and who I want to be. My actions align with my values, right? But here's a conundrum that comes with this. And this is why I said 2 things, is if you live your life the way that I described, the likelihood that your values consist of pushing yourself out of your comfort zone is going to be very high. And so basically what that means is there's always going to be a gap. Because if I come to a place where there is no gap between who I am and who I want to be, then I'm not pushing myself hard enough. I hope you guys understand this concept. I'm going to say this one more time. So my ego is the gap between who I am and who I want to be. My values, the way to close that gap is I become who I want to be. That means I have to get better. I have to stand in integrity and develop the skills of discipline and fortitude and grit and create the life that I want to create. There's no facade. There's no mask. I'm not pretending. I'm actually being that person. But if you come to a place where you take your personal development that seriously, the likelihood that your values dictate that you continue to push the envelope in your life and get better are going to be very high. And so what's going to happen is there's going to be a constant battle of closing this gap that you'll never win intentionally. Because if you close the gap of where your ego is, then you become complacent. And if that gap becomes too big, then you stand out of integrity in who you are. And so for us men, this should feel like a constant fight where those insecurities, those doubts, those excuses, those uncertainties, that lack of self-esteem, those quote, whatever all you guys call demons, that space is where they live. The way to close that is to defeat those demons, defeat those insecurities, defeat those inadequacies. And what's going to happen when you go to do a new thing is you're going to create a new space for new demons. You see what we're doing? These are the skills that you have to develop in order to level up, is how to defeat the things that exist in that space. So if you look at your life as steps, where you are now, and this goes back to what I was talking about earlier, the difference between where I am now and where I want to be is the things that I do. Your identity is dictated by what? The things that you do, right? The things in between are action that close that gap. So what is going to overcome the depression? What is going to overcome the anxiety? What is going to overcome the lack of confidence and lack of self-esteem or the uncertainties or the self-doubt or all the problems that you're facing? Action. Do you see what we're doing here? Now I've learned the skill of how to defeat that demon. I hate using that term, but I'm using it because it's an easy way for you guys to understand the concept. And now that I've vanquished that demon, I have taken one step forward in my life towards that next step. When I close that gap, I have now accomplished this identity that I sought, right? And now I'm opening a new layer of more difficult demons and challenges. This is life. And so what can happen is if you do what I'm describing, you're constantly feeling like you're in this place of inadequacy, like you're not doing enough. You're where you should be. This is how you get to that next layer, that next level of mindset and personal mastery. Always, this is going to be in perpetuity, this feeling. That's how you know you're doing what you should be doing. This isn't a bad thing to be in that space. It's a good thing. A cleaner doesn't know he's a cleaner because he never feels like he's enough. If you're living in a world where you feel like you're good enough, you've become complacent. Your mommy lied to you. Your coaches lied to you. You're not good enough. Your goal is to become good enough. But in pursuit of being good enough, you're going to realize that's what life is never being good enough. Learn to live with the fact that you will never be good enough and understand that that's the journey. And then eventually what's going to happen is you're going to come to a point in your life where, like I said earlier, fear of death no longer exists because you served your purpose and you're finally good enough. So I wanted to spend some time talking about this specific topic because I think it applies to a lot of the guys who have been really, really working hard to close that gap and live their lives in integrity. And with that comes, fuck, I'm not good enough. I don't deserve to be here. I could be doing better. And it's hard. I want you to shift your thinking and stop fighting and looking at that feeling as if it's a bad thing. It's a good thing. Because if you wake up in the morning and you're like, fuck, I'm good enough, it's very likely that that's because you've become complacent in your progress. If you're depressed, that means that there's a gap and you need to close it. And how do we close that gap of our ego? With action. Do more. Chris, I was just running those thoughts through my mind on my drive home. All right. I know I just went fucking next level with you guys tonight. It really gave you a lot to think about. But I talk about this concept in my book. There's a gap between who you are and who you want to be, and that's what your ego is. At a certain threshold of integrity, your ego becomes a tool because when you start feeling insecure, you can say, oh, that's my fucking ego. I need to tighten up my integrity. When you start to feel depression, I need to put the pedal to the metal. Most men are so far out of alignment in their integrity that all of the things that we talked about have dogpiled their depression, their anxiety, their feelings of inadequacy, their sense of self-worth, their poor self-esteem, their lack of confidence, their this, their problems in their relationship, their fucking lack of relationship with their kids. And it's like they feel overwhelmed. They have all these fucking problems just piled on top of them, and they don't know where to start. This is where the guys come into our Facebook group and they're like, I'm not motivated, right? You know what you need to do, but you just can't. It doesn't feel like it's worth it. You don't know where to start. You feel overwhelmed. You're stressed. Your life has fallen out of your own control, right? But then as you progress on this path of self-growth and personal development, and you start to achieve that certain threshold of integrity, now those things that I used to feel overwhelmed by are only coming one at a time. So now I can fight this depression head on and address that. And it's one obstacle at a time, right? Your goal should be to live in that gap where the space between who you are and who you want to be is small enough for your one problem. And then when you close that, you open it up for another problem, another mindset shift, another challenge.